right, I think everybody here knows me, but my name is Jason Montgomery. I've been a member here at New Hope Christian Church for, I think since I was about 13, 14 years old, but I've been coming here my whole life and probably about 3 more generations before that. I have been, if you're wondering why I get to stand up here and talk, I was been into gardening and plants most of my life. I had my own landscape business for 15 years. Before that, I had really researched and studied, fixed up my yard. I had a Japanese garden in the backyard with a 3,000-gallon koi pond. I raised and showed koi all over the southeast. Kind of got my start in gardening and stuff. When I was a little boy, I used to stay with my great-grandparents a lot in the summertime. They lived right over here on Harrington, not far from where I live now, Irene and Buck Atkinson. And she had been a florist at one time. I would go in the summertime and we would go out in the field and water tomato plants and eggplants and pick okra and corn and whatever else. And then she had all kind of flowers around her house, and she knew the names of all of them and flowering trees and things. And I think that's where my fascination began. And real quick, if you're curious, this is the Oakland Community Garden, and that's the Oakland Community Cemetery across the street. And if any of you have ever wondered why Oakland, I know this is Oakland Road over here, but this whole area used to be the community of Oakland before it was part of Lawrenceville. There is actually a picture here. This is a book, Vanishing Gwinnett. This is a school picture. On the front row, the 4th one over, is my great-grandmother. Wow. And this is Oakland Community School. It was at the corner of Oakland and Cruise Road right over here, a little wooden building. I don't know if anybody's curious. Take a look. 4th one from the right, Irene Atkinson, or Hughes at the time. But also, strangely enough, my father's mother is in that photo. And I don't know if anybody remembers, or some of you do, I'm sure, Olin Southern. His father's in that picture as well, and lots of other people from the community that didn't actually come to this church. But anyway, this has different sides to it, the north, the east, the west, the south, and every one of them is going to be a little bit different microclimate. So your southern exposure, your western exposure is going to get the most sun, especially in the summertime. It's going to be very hot there. You're going to have to choose plants accordingly that can take the heat. Your northern, if you have plants that like a lot more shade, like maybe some hydrangeas and stuff like that, your northern or your eastern exposure. Your eastern exposure is going to get morning sun, but by the time the sun gets high and it's really hot, usually the house is shading that area. So
when I go to the plant store and I'm looking for, then I would look for shade-loving plants if I'm trying to do the east side of my house?
The east side or the north side?
East or north?
Most plants want some amount of sun. So even if it says full shade, you can put that on the eastern side almost all the time.
Okay.
There's a few exceptions of deep shade plants and things that would rather be tucked away under a big tree or something like that.
Okay.
And also, if you wanted something on the side of your house that maybe like the southern exposure, and this is more of a dapple shade or partial sun, if you do have a large tree, you can plant as well under that.
So if I want to do hostas, because I think that those like some shade, I have to first know what side of the house, and then
how much sun.
Okay.
Yeah. And hostas is a good example for shade loving. You'll see hostas in places that are almost full sun. Know that that ground is probably naturally wet a lot, because some of those type plants you can get away with it as long as you water them frequently enough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that brings up how much work do you really want to put into it? If you get hosta and you stick it in the sun, yeah, if you want to water it twice a day, you can get away with it.
I
gotcha.
gotcha.
Go on vacation and come back and it's wilted to the ground dead. So,
I gotcha. Okay.
This is one of the, many things that I have had to learn over the years.
What about adding a lot of mulch? Does that not help?
Mulch
to retain
helps to keep a little moisture in the water.
Mm-hmm.
In the ground. Your dirt's not going to dry up from direct sun if you have a good 1.5 to 2 inches of mulch. Also, mulch does suppress suppress weeds somewhat. You
Okay.
still, from time to time, will need to go around and pull or spray or whatever. And there's different things, you know, I don't know if y'all know much about spraying weeds on a windy day like today. Obviously not the best time. Most herbicides are indiscriminate, meaning they will kill anything. And you might spray directly on this plant, but the wind is going to put it over here on your hosta that you're trying to keep alive and end up killing your hosta. So yeah, that's one thing that.
Well, I didn't mean to
everybody-
get you sidetracked from, you
No,
were
no,
talking
no,
about
that's-
the different exposure.
Yeah.
We can come back to herbicides.
But anyway, yeah. And like you said, when to plant. That's another very good thing, because a lot of trees, bulbs, much better to plant them in the fall of the year. Bulbs need a cooling period before they emerge, or they're not gonna make it, they're gonna wilt, or you're not gonna get any flowers out of them, especially for a year or so. Trees, it's better to plant them in the fall. That way they can spend the whole winter trying to get their root system out, and makes it easier for them to survive the hot summer than later. If you plant them in the spring, you're gonna have a smaller root system, and it's gonna be, once again, a lot of work for you to keep that tree watered.
Okay. Yeah, she's got a pear tree that she needs to plant. Should she wait?
It's been in a bucket since December, November.
Is it outgrowing the bucket?
No.
Okay, it probably would be okay, and you may want to take it and pull it out. Make sure it's not getting root bound, meaning that the roots are starting to grow in a circle onto each other and
Yes.
everything. If it's okay, or if it is starting to get root bound, you could move it up to a larger pot.
Okay.
Keep it in a shaded area, keep it watered.
So should I dig up the peach tree and stick it back in the pot?
I don't.
I mean, that thing, do you see it? Do y'all see how cute it is?
But I don't.
It started growing leaves in my kitchen, in a in a 5-gallon bucket. So
I think it'll be fine. And if we get freezing weather, just put something over it, right? To protect
Oh
it.
yeah, if we have a late frost, it'll scorch those leaves. So yeah, you might want to put something over it, a little blanket or something like that. I see people wrap in plastic, but I don't like that, because I don't think that's going to give you any insulation overnight. And then if you don't immediately get the plastic off of it, the next day it's going to heat up super fast in there, and that's not going to be great.
I don't know if it works here, but in Florida we use bed sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just put it, or a pillowcase. Just put them in.
I've seen- When we've had late frosts in the past, and like azaleas are already starting to flower and stuff, because it'll burn the buds right off.
Yeah.
really,
So a lot of people will go out and put the sheets and things over their azalea bushes, so it'll maybe keep those buds, so you'll continue to get flowers. Talking about azaleas and whether or not you're going to get flowers and stuff, azaleas, gardenias, things like that are best pruned just after they do flower. Because what you're going to do is, if you wait till later on, like in the fall, and think, well, this gardenia, I didn't prune it, I'm going to prune it now. Well, you're pruning off all the future buds, and you're not going to get any flowers. I went to a lady's house one day, I was working, and she wanted me to dig these plants up. I don't even know what they are. And I said, they look like gardenias. And she said, oh, I don't think so. They've never flowered. And the more I got to talking to her, she pruned it like multiple times throughout the year to keep them the right size. And I was like, yeah, they're gardenias. You have just managed to cut every new growth off of it, so that you're not going to ever have any flowers whatsoever.
Almost any flowering thing, the best time to prune is after they flowered, right? And then
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Except for crepe myrtle.
Yeah, crepe myrtle's done before, right? It's done early in January.
Yeah,
Okay, I thought it was February. Ooh, that's loud.
And the new boys. But yeah, and in January, February, pruning your crepe myrtles, pruning your roses. Another thing you can do. If you have monkey grass, which is liriope or liriope or whatever y'all want to call it, that all that kind of stuff is like by the end of February, you kind of need to have that taken care of. And zinnias are one of my favorites for low maintenance, because they are drought tolerant and just flowers from spring until fall. When I was trying to think the right plant for the right spot, it brought me to one of the main plants that I like to use for foundation plantings is Indian hawthorn. Well, Indian hawthorn can grow 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, but there are varieties, and I meant to look this up, and I thought about it last night. I think it's a variety called Snow White that has white flowers, and it will stay down around 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. And so when you're doing foundation plantings, for one thing, don't plant a small plant really close to your house because it looks right. Think about how large the plant is going to eventually get. You want at least a foot or 2 between that plant and your house to allow a little bit of air circulation to come through, allow the pesticide man to walk around and spray or
Whatever,
If you
yeah.
have your house painted and plants are right up against it, that guy's going to have to come through and hack your plants half in two. So, you know, give it a little bit of space, but also, like we were talking about, a plant that will grow up to a certain height depending on the windows of your house. I see people plant these tall growing holly bushes and things, and they're cute when they're small, and now they've completely blocked your windows. And it's, once again, you're trimming 2 or 3 times a year after year after year, to try to keep these things down into a proper size.
Next to the house, and it's, I just don't know how. I don't want it there.
Yeah.
It's grown out like this. Okay. I'm
Somebody with a
exaggerating.
chainsaw.
It's grown out like this. Okay. It's this thick, and it's taken up the whole. I'm so happy. Okay.
Sorry.
And I just need it removed because I'm afraid of what it might do to the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. So bushes that get really
chainsaw it.
tall,
Yeah.
does that mean that their root systems are going really wide, like a tree?
They are, and some things, especially some things that are like heavy woody or tree-like, like a holly or something like that. If their roots, if your house is on a slab or something, there is a 2x4 at the bottom of the wall, and then your studs are going up, and that tiny little root might find a gap, and then as it swells up, you're going to start noticing cracks in your sheetrock. Your doors might not want to shut properly and stuff like that. Bamboo is one of the worst for doing stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hard to kill.
Yep. Yeah. So to kill the big holly, a chainsaw, and then as soon as the new shoots come up, spray them. You may have to do that several times, but eventually it's going to be starved of sunlight and the energy from the sunlight, and it's not going to be happy, and it's going to die.
Okay.
But if you want to keep a holly, once it starts to grow, that's when you were talking about the side
now,
shoots.
if you wanted to make a small holly out of it, cut it off, and when those new shoots come up, instead of letting them get long and lanky,
Sure.
go up so far and cut them, and then when those then when it splits, cut those, and you're
So
gonna
there's
make
an
a much
art
thicker
to it.
bush. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So I know nada about flowers, veggies. Take it from me, black thumb all the way around. When I fertilize it, do I just sprinkle it around the outside where the roots would be, or?
You can do that because a lot of those, especially rhododendrons and azaleas, are sort of in that family. They don't really like those roots being messed with a whole lot.
Right.
So if it's got mulch around it, you may want to pull some mulch back,
No, it doesn't.
sprinkle the fertilizer around it, and then maybe mulch it if it doesn't have mulch.
Okay.
You could come out, like if this was the circumference of the azalea bush,
That's about right.
any kind of tree or thing, and we talked about this the other day, this is what you would call the drip line.
Right.
So the roots are going to be further out than the drip line depending on the size of the plant. Like that pecan tree over there, the roots may be as much as almost twice, the distance from the drip line, from the trunk. But you want to come out a little ways and scratch that ground. You can buy those little 3-clawed cultivators, little hand thing, or I think there's a garden weasel thing that we have here that you stick in and twist to kind of break the ground up. If you start seeing the roots, maybe take a step back.
Okay.
Because the very
And what's the benefit to doing this?
you can get the fertilizer
Oh, into the, okay.
dirt and not wait for it to kind of soak in over a period of time.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
genius.
and slow release fertilizer is better because it's not going to burn the roots tips, and the root tips is where you want this stuff. The woodier part of the root that's near the base of the tree is not going to take up hardly any nutrients or water or anything. It's the tips out here. And so that's why you see when they start to build a parking lot and there's these great oak trees or something, they'll pretend like they're going to try to save that oak tree and keep the tree huggers off their back by, you know, well, we'll come over here, but they didn't go nearly far enough, so they cut all the little root tips off, and so then in a few months the tree's dead.
Eventually.
So yeah.
Well, this is good to know.
Yeah.
I'm finished.
Somebody else take turns.
Real quick, we talked about mulch. I shop at Costco a lot. I don't know about y'all. They came out with this product here that I'm excited to see what it'll do. This is coconut husk. You know, you have the coconut, it's the brown outside of it. This came from India, so somebody shredded, you know, pulled those husks off, and I'm always glad when somebody from a third world country, you know, can come up with some way to make some money over here. But anyway, it has been vacuum packed super tight, and it is a mulch. It's supposedly 1.5 inches deep, cover about 20 feet. So what you do, because it has been dried and vacuum packed, there's 2 blocks in here, and you soak it, each block, it's set in 5 gallons of water, and it should take between 5 and 10 minutes. And so I've never done this before, so right here, me and you are going to figure this out.
I love it.
It says that it reduces watering. Right?
Yeah, it reduces watering.
So if you want to put some of that around your tree out there.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea. We did the black mulch out here.
What did it cost?
Say it again. I
This,
didn't.
What does it cost?
it
Oh.
cost, I want to say between $12 and $15. Something I can't actually remember. That's something I should have looked at before I left the house.
It says
All of it is 20 feet or each block?
Each
Each
block
block.
expands to 2.5 cubic feet times,
Yeah, cubic feet, there's 2 of them.
and then you got
times
2 of
two.
them. Yeah.
So yeah. I have in this wheelbarrow roughly 5 gallons of water.
Did you use the 5-gallon jug to measure?
Nope, 'cause that's why it's rough. And I'm
got a
gonna,
5-gallon bucket.
I'm gonna place it in there, and we're gonna give it 5 or 10 minutes to soak up that, and we'll
you
just
got it, Peggy. Okay.
see what we're doing.
I want to go see
Well, come see it.
over here.
Oh, it's gonna take it 5 or 10 minutes. So
I know.
we're
Is it gonna
keep-
sink?
We're gonna keep talking. So we're gonna let that soak for a little while.
So
see
since
if
you're
the-
talking about mulches, I've never seen that. I've seen a product similar that you can plant in. That's really neat. So you've got this, you've got pine, I guess that's like pine bark, and then there's like straw. Like, what are the best kind of mulches that you've used, and what are the differences?
Is this the dyed black?
It is.
So the dyed black is probably pine, because what they use a lot of is old building material, basically old 2x4s and stuff, or rejects from the sawmills and stuff like that. And they'll saw it, you know, they'll just run it through a big shredder
Right?
and pull it out. They'll spray a dye, a black, a brown, a red on there. When that first came out, I got into it. I went and bought a truckload of red mulch. This is going to be the coolest thing. I came home and I shoveled it over red clay, and it looked exactly the same, and I was so disappointed.
The mulch that we used in the beds last year was black, but it wasn't dyed black. It was free from Lawrenceville, city of Lawrenceville.
Okay.
Gives it away on Paper Mill Road, and it's exactly what you're talking about. People will come and dump building material, and then they shred it, and then over time it starts to decompose, and by the time we got it, it was so cooked down. It was almost compost, but it was still a lot of the wood chips were in there, so it was a really dark black, not dyed mulch.
Yeah, and that brings up, you said it was cooked down, or
Yeah.
it was decomposing, and that is another good thing about mulch, is that as it's going to rot, it is going to create more nutrients for the soil, for the plants as well. You said, what kind of mulch have I used that I like?
Yeah.
This is what I use a lot of, Cypress Mulch,
I love
shredded
that.
cypress. And one of the main benefits, somebody actually took the initiative that rented my house before I came back, to put pine bark around the bed, around the mailbox. Every time it comes a hard rain, pine bark floats, goes over the curb and goes right on down the street.
But
Shred,
that
this does not float. It actually says,
doesn't retain moisture.
yeah, it locks
It
together.
retains moisture, sorry.
I haven't looked this up. If I was a younger man, I would have immediately got my phone out and looked it up. But somebody told me a long time ago that cypress repels fleas and ticks.
Oh,
Look it up.
Cedar is what I'm afraid they might have been thinking of when they told me about cypress. So,
Yes, cedar.
like I said, I've never looked it up. I think Miss Gail's doing something here.
she's looking it up. I use that. I don't know if it's that brand, but I use the Cypress Mulch at my house, and I do like it.
Yeah,
Do you think that the black dye would be harmful?
I don't think it
Not
is.
since they've used it for plants, I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I think. they
Yeah, I
would
mean,
go-
I don't think you want your child chewing on it or
Yeah,
anything.
but I mean, so it wouldn't hinder your plants because otherwise they couldn't make.
The only thing I would say, because it might have some building materials, is you might not want to put a bunch of it around vegetables or things you're going to eat, because you might end up getting some leaching from
Yeah.
some sort of chemical treatment from the wood.
Right. Which, like I
I
said,
don't
we
know.
didn't use that in the beds.
Right.
We used the natural stuff in the beds. This is for the flower
Yeah.
garden.
And I see no problem with that at all.
Well, it's termite resistant.
Nice.
Okay.
Let's see what
The
else.
cypress is termite resistant. Yeah.
And cypress trees grow in a swamp, so I don't know if they're naturally rot resistant and decay resistant. I'm not going to say you're going to get a little more life out of it, but it's possible.
It does. It says it keeps insects away.
Yeah, I like the natural look of it and everything. If you've got an area where you're not going to have, if you're not on any kind of slope, the pine bark may work just perfectly fine for you. There are shredded pines and things like that.
I've heard of shredded rubber. Like,
Yeah.
is it now? How is that?
That's used tires, and that's actually a very good thing as well. Costco sells it, but they only have a red color, and like I said, I kind of got burned one time with
Sure.
the red, so I'm not buying into it.
So how does it work? I guess it just keeps the dirt cool. Is that why it
Yeah.
retains?
Yeah, you put a 1.5 to 2 inches of even shredded rubber pieces, and it's not like a solid rubber sheet.
Sure.
It's shredded, so your air and water are going to be able to go through.
Okay.
It's a shade, and you've all pulled back old leaves and how wet it is underneath and everything, and that's just what the mulch is going to do. It's going to keep moisture.
But if it's black, it's going to absorb heat from the sun.
Which is what you need for the plants to grow anyway.
Some plants, yeah,
Yeah,
you
some
might,
plants, you
if
gotta
you're
do
not
it.
big on the watering and stuff, you might overheat some more sensitive plants.
I've seen the shredded rubber used a lot in playgrounds.
Yeah, when that first came out, I was at a landscape expo thing. They had taken it and made it was shredded, but then it was kind of fused together, and they had rolls of it, very expensive at the time, where you could do pathways with it. Now they've got edging, they got the circular pieces, and it'll have a slit, so you can put them around a tree, like the little peach tree out here, and you just plop it down, and it's got instant mulch. Now, the problem with that is it's only got a certain size hole, so as the tree starts to get bigger, you're going to have to stay, aware and take it off, maybe cut the hole bigger, or just replace it with something. Or by that time, the tree itself might have enough roots that you don't need as much mulch around it.
Yeah.
Well, you brought us some fun stuff. I see carrots back there.
Yeah.
Where'd it come from?
So, I have 2 vegetable boxes at my house. I planted carrots last year, early in the spring. I got a variety that had multiple colored carrots. Kept waited I don't remember how many days carrots take, 90 days or whatever. Never had a carrot bigger than my pinky finger. I kept thinning, I kept them watered, I kept working on it, and finally I just gave up. I was never going to have a decent carrot. They stayed there all winter long. A few weeks ago I looked and thought, man, that foliage looks really good out there on those carrots. I wish you could do something with the foliage, which I've just been informed you can. Well, I went and looked.
That's what you got.
These are my carrots that overwintered now. I went from absolutely nothing, but it took almost a whole year. Wow. This one's trying to walk away. But,
How did it taste?
yeah.
Gail wants to know, how did it taste?
I have eaten 2 of them, and they have been fine, though I will say there's a couple of them, like this one in particular, this much of it was out of the ground when I pulled it right before I came here. So I imagine this is going to be hard and woody. You might, you know, be able to do something with this end of it, but probably the closer you come up here, it's going to get harder. But
What are you gonna do?
I'm going to share these with whoever wants them because I've still got some at home. That's
So you know it's gonna take a little bit longer for your carrots to.
So I learned, I looked it up. If your carrots are not, you know, whatever, if you want to overwinter them, but it did say to keep an eye on them because they will get woody, they will go to flower, and once they go to flower, they're not edible anymore. They might still be edible, but they're not gonna
Bitter.
taste as good.
Yeah.
Or bitter, not as sweet.
Yeah.
This block of wood or chip coconut, by the way, has already expanded quite a bit. I'm probably going to shred it up.
Yeah.
Do you need a shovel or a
Um,
hand? Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
What would you like?
That.
yeah. I think I'm just going to put it back down
Okay.
the dry part.
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
doing it. It's
Yeah.
this is wonderful.
And like I said, extremely renewable resource because you don't eat the outside. Young coconuts, people get them for what they call spoon meat. You can split it open, you can take a spoon and scoop all the white out and eat it. You can drink the water out of it, and as a coconut matures, you can find those coconuts on the ground with a tree about a foot tall. Take a machete, split that open, and it's like white cotton candy on the inside. You can eat all that as well.
Of the trunk of the tree?
No, this is the actual coconut.
Oh, okay.
And then what this is,
Germinating.
yeah, this is the outer hull of that coconut itself,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
of the tree.
That's
What else did you bring for us? I see terracotta pots and
Okay, so we probably have enough terracotta pots. I had talked about my great-grandmother. When she passed away first, and many years later, my great-grandfather died, and I went up to the house. They had an estate sale, and I was going through an old barn. I found a ton of terracotta pots. These were hers. These were Miss Irene's terracotta pots. And if anybody's interested, I don't even know if I have enough planting mix, potting soil here, but I have got a few plants of cilantro. I've got one little Thai pepper here. The cilantro can be divided up because there's at least 3 plants in each one of these pots. But if anybody would like a take-home keepsake,
so these are giveaways.
these are giveaways.
Thank
And
you.
what I would say, I don't know if everybody knows how to create a pot. You've got a drain hole, at least one in the bottom. What you don't want to do is pack a bunch of soil in there and completely close that hole off. So normally what you would do, these slate chips are great for this kind of thing. Put a few rocks in there. You can take busted tile, gravel, whatever. Don't put a small one right over the hole though. That'll
Or just go in your yard and get some rocks.
you can get some rocks. With really large pots, I have taken old like 1 gallon containers that come from the nursery. I'll turn one upside down and maybe even cut a few up to fill in around, and then take maybe like some weed block material and cut a round piece that'll sit down in there, because the water will go through that. And I'm talking about big containers. I've got one that's probably this big around and this tall. Well, I don't want to fill it with soil all the way to the bottom. That's expensive and wasteful because the roots of the plants I'm planting are not going to get that deep anyway. So what I've done is taken about a third of it is just void now. And so I've got the soil in the top half, got my plants. The water can then soak, through and go out if it's overwatered. Only problem with that would be is if you're going to go away. Some people like put a saucer into their pots. If you've got a void in the bottom, that water's never going to make it back up. Also, these are
I thought
unglazed.
the saucer was not to help it wick back up. I thought it was if you poured in too much.
It kind of goes both ways.
But it actually it'll go back up because it's
If you have-
porous.
Yeah.
And it'll
Especially
wick
this
it
is
back up.
unglazed terracotta.
Oh, how neat.
This is really good. It's not the most attractive
didn't
pot
know
in the world, but it's really good because you can get air, oxygen, and water. Tiny amounts of it can go through.
And if you've got broken pots, you can use your broken pots to go in your bottoms.
Yep,
of your
and I have a bunch of broken pots too. I went through them, but
don't
these
wanna
pots
break
sit in my shed for about 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, you know what? I can take some of these because I'm going to mention, her. Yep.
So we want to not block the drain hole. because we need to allow for drainage, but we want to catch some of the water if they're on the inside of the house.
Yeah,
so it's not all over the floor.
If you're going to put this inside the house, you will definitely want to get some sort of either a terracotta or a clear plastic little thing. They sell them at all the different gardening shops and stuff. And then use an actual potting mix. This is Miracle Grow. It does have the nutrients in there. It's got some moisture, the little beads that soak up the moisture and slowly release them as the soil dries out. You don't want to get a planting mix because that's for outside in the ground. Now you can use potting mix in the ground outside, but planting mix is not going to have everything that
right.
you need in the pot.
Well, thank you, Jason. Does anybody have any more questions for Jason before he wraps it up? You're about to wrap it up?
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know if y'all want to...
This I definitely want to see. This is...
Yeah. So this is...
And it is obvious that is the best container to let it swell in.
Yeah.
Well, not...
Because now I can move it.
That's right.
I was going to tell you, Jason.
We have a hole in it, so I wasn't sure if it was the best
really
container,
wet
but
right
it did
now.
well.
Well, I was talking about the type.
I want to tell you what I saw, Marcus.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll grow to a more darker brown as it ages as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. We all know that wood, what happens to wood, well, if you don't know from the composting workshop that we had, it'll break down and it'll feed the earth with nutrients. But what about this? Will this actually also break down?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because it's organic?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That is very cool.
And like I said, a really, really good renewable resource. We have an almost indefinite amount of this kind of stuff throughout the tropical areas and things. And you're helping an
And
impoverished
Costco.
country.
Economy.
And you're helping Costco.
I don't think Costco
Probably
needs
not.
the help.
I wanted to tell you, Jason, the way I watched the Martha Stewart segment and the way she did, like when you got a really big pot and you don't want to use all of that, she used bubble wrap in the bottom.
Yeah.
And then she used that garden rug, kind of, what I don't know what you call it, but it's a rug type thing.
The
And she
weed
would
block or whatever.
Yeah, and she would put that on top, and then she would put her plants in, and then tuck the weed block around the sides. But it helped to fill up the pot without using all the soil.
Because moving a pot with a lot of soil is almost impossible unless you have two mats or a mat and a Jason to help you. It's hard.
Her pots were concrete too. I mean,
Yeah, they were really big. I think I saw that episode.
Yeah, it was
I thought that was
great.
the neatest
Especially helps
thing.
if you fill the bubble wrap with helium.
Helium. That makes
She's,
it lighter,
I think she's kidding.
Plants will talk with a high-pitched voice.
Jason, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming out today. I'm just gonna wrap this up. And if anybody wants a plant, stick around and grab one.